Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Senem. Some of you know me already. I go by she, her, hers. And I'm really grateful actually to this amazing space, Experimental Sound Studio. If you've never been in the spot, please explore it more. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here and talk about my own practice. I'm a sound and intermediate artist, which means no matter which medium that I work with, sound has been always my lead. In intermediate, the compositional process works across the boundaries between disciplines, and each medium informs one another during the compositional process. And similarly, in my artistic work, it is a very interdisciplinary work. It crosses over sound art, sound engineering, video art, electroacoustic music composition, movement, performance, and installation. And I try to think about that each element that I incorporate into my work informs one another. And those actually relational process creates a compositional form, tries across sensory modalities. So that's what I aim for with my own practice. My practice is a collaborative practice. I collaborate with artists, non-human entities, physical spaces, and the vibrations that surrounds me. And as a queer and migrant artist, I hold the constant tension of being in between places, of being disoriented and oriented. And I am drawn to explore these strategies, and I'm drawn to explore these strategies to reproduce this conflict kind of in my work. My artistic process is also deeply informed by deep listening practice developed by Pauline Oliveros, as well as other feminist and queer methodologies. I investigate concepts such as disorientation by Sarah Ahmed, or interaction by Karen Barat, who's an amazing physicist, or queer futurity by Jose Munoz, and I try to materialize them through experimental art making, often with both human and non-human collaborators. So these non-human collaborators can be, for example, vibrators, inflatables in my other installation work, tears, and plastic. And my artistic process also focuses on improvisation as a research method and an inquiry to understanding how agency emerges towards this interconnected world making. This inquiry is often materialized in my work, again, as sometimes performances, audiovisual performances, multisensory installations, compositions, or audiovisual essays. And in today's talk, I will directly focus on my performance practice and share some methods and techniques that I incorporate in those performances. So this is a very performance-focused presentation. If you are interested in my other work, installations, and etc., you can check out my website for those works. So today, yes, I will give you a quick background, and we will directly dive into some of the performances that I did in the past and current performances that I'm in the middle of it. And we will actually break down this performance piece, Unearthly Vibrations. We will break down the setup, and I will demonstrate the piece in front of you. The demonstration is going to be not fully a performance, but let's say a snippet of a performance. So, as a background, I come from a traditional music education. I studied classical piano in another lifetime at a conservatory in Turkey. I also have a background in sound engineering and design, and I always consider the studio as my playground. Sound has been always the basic unit of my compositional practice. And when I work in the studio, which is normally considered a very controlled environment, improvisation and play and experimentation have been always at the forefront of my practice. So it was never actually besides what I do in the studio. I actually played around with those ideas even in the studio. This quote, I highly consider this quote as one of the things that I think about generally in life. Play is the greatest research tool that the human race has, by Pauline Oliveros. And I think about my improvisational practice as a diffractive practice. In other words, my collaborators and I read and listen to each other in a relational way, looking for creative and unexpected provocations. I borrowed the term diffraction by the physicist Karen Barat. I like the term because it really talks about how actually diffractive methodology as a practice of reading insights through one another while paying attention to patterns of difference. So rather than simply reflecting, comparing, or contrasting, or using binary oppositions, diffractively engaging with materials allows us to actually think transversally across multiple disciplinary fields of knowledge. So I materialized this approach in my improvisation practice. The idea is that my collaborators and I entangle, engage, and change within each other. And those relations are not static, rather they are active and performative. So I will present a couple of works under, based on these ideas. So the first work that I will present is based on the score by Pauline Oliveros, The Witness. I was a key collaborator performer in the Witness project. It's a actually practice-based research project utilizing the Witness score and deep listening itself to look deeper into acoustics, entangled human and more than human relations. This project is based on the score, and this score consists of 3 strategies of becoming a witness by listening, attuning, and responding to our environment and in all its inhabitants. For example, we can attune to the rhythm of water droplets, spatial positioning of insect sounds, or the sonic choreography of the birds, and welcome these contributions as direct and collaborative engagements in our practice. So, for example, first strategy, Pauline notes that the attention to oneself is focusing on attention exclusively one's own performance, no matter what the others perform. The line that is, it says, each sound should be unique in every aspect, as if it were sculpted out of totally different material each time, is probably the most challenging task to a performer. And strategy 1 is a practice for interrupting your settled patterns and of thinking, playing, composing, and it serves really as a preparation for the second strategy, which is attention to others. It's a more familiar improvisational ground. If you're a performer, improviser, you are probably familiar with this idea that you listen for a sound and react spontaneously and etc. And the attention all over is to go expand one's field of attention as far as possible. Also very challenging task, but not as probably challenging as the first one. So we actually performed this score in very different environments, including without Jane mine, which I will show you the video because I really loved performing this piece in a mine. But also, for example, at fancy places like Carnegie Hall. And that was an interesting performance because, it shows how Carnegie Hall can be a very conservative place. It was the first time that the main stage was used in the round configuration. And it was actually the first time that it was used in a quad configuration at the same time. So, and I designed the sound for that in an electroacoustic music composition, by the way, just to be clear. So this is a little performance snippet from the Jane Widow Mine with my collaborators. Claire Chase, Suzy Ibarra, Alex Pe, and me on electronics. As another example of this diffractive improvisation based on using text scores is 13 Changes by Pirler. And this is the performance that was in Southbank Centre in London. And in this example, our approach was a little bit different. We read the score line by line as we were taking and listening Pauline's instructions for the first time. And this was for the purpose of having a more intimate dialogue with the score itself. This is a documentation of that.
Elephants mating in a secret grove.
And this is another example of how my performance practice is also very much, again, collaborative, informed by other people's actually own practices. And this is a piece was created based on the interviews of Autumn Night, collected and recorded, featuring the complaints of people who are not usually allowed to complain or who we do not expect here complaining. If you are familiar with Autumn Night's practice, it's a very campy, humoristic practice, and we were actually really focusing on the performance aspect of this practice. This piece was performed for 4 days, twice in a day, and it was live streamed from the museum. Each day we also had a live audience in the space, and this is all performed live and mixed for both live audiences and for the remote audiences. piece surface connection. This piece began with Monica Duncan in 2018 during a residency at Signal Culture. And we performed this piece in multiple places. This is a project based on a series of audiovisual interactions, recipes where we touch, excite surfaces and objects. We actually developed this piece, initially started this piece as a single channel video piece, and we quickly realized that it was essential to show the process of making this piece live and revealing our connections to the materials and our interaction with one another, more than human bodies and surfaces. So we actually set up, in this piece, we set up reflective mylar, survival blankets, balloons as environments to perform and create a space that has qualities of reflection and diffraction. We collaborate with a lot of different materials. Some of them are vibrators, tuning forks, unicorn horn dildo, fingers, etc., voice. And we use real-time signal processing tools such as modular synthesis systems, as you can see, video audio mixers and transducers. This is an example of how we actually think about our structured improvisations. We actually come up with signal flow diagrams, and that gives us a lot of possibilities to play around with our signals. And then based on this signal flow, we come up with gestural ideas for our structured improvisations in a live setting. We again perform this piece in large spaces, small spaces, a lot of different spaces. This is a short snippet of this. Moving forward, this is actually a very, it's 2025, it's supposed to be, sorry. It's actually a very recent piece. We performed this piece in September 12 in MIT Museum. It's called Plankton Performance with Jess Halls. And this collaboration, our aim is to highlight how plankton reveal themselves and how their movements can inform our decision making through an improvised practice. So under this specific performance was done by Jess on a microscope and me on sound live. So Jess was using a specific Leica microscope to capture plankton's movement. And also a unique time-lapse exposure technique. And I was using the plankton's movement as a graphic score for a structured live improvisation. And the idea was to, rather than presenting planktons as specimens, we wanted to elevate them as co-creators. And the main thing was for us to reveal the dynamic and searching behaviors of these microscopic creatures in a more highlighted space. And we created movement 1, movement 2, and movement 3 based on where the water was sampled. So this is from Boston Harbor. of the setup that we will give it. Yes, of course.
With all of these performances so far, have you been using completely unique setups for each performance, or are there certain elements that carry over between? I find that you're able to get into such specific and unique sonic scapes, it seems so quickly and intuitively. I'm wondering if that's like pure exploration or if you can lean on existing knowledge for it.
That's a great question. So, in my performances, I really try to depend on what my sources are. So, for example, in this plankton performance, you can see that I still have an aquarium, but instead of vibrators, I had cat toys in it, which I will explain how that works. But that immediately changes what kind of a sound material that I can sculpt, right? In the surface connection, the mylar was attached with contact microphones. That immediately changes what my source material is. And also, of course, the vocal microphone also is another source. My performance setup is I'm very comfortable how I move in this performance setup, so I try to keep it intact. I find this performance setup as a kind of a setup that I can always get more and more familiar with in certain ways, but I try to keep it intact, but really focus on the source and also, which we will get into it, a little bit more of the specialization of the sound with different qualities. So those are the things that I like to change a lot. And of course, I mean, in the first example, in Witness, we were in a cave. So I really love to work with acoustics and the physical spaces and how I can actually change the sound based on the response that comes from the physical space. So those are the things that I love to play around with. And those are the reasons that I can actually come up with a bit more expansive sonic language, but the tools that I'm using, they are pretty much the same tools. I don't change my performance setup that much.
Thank you.
Which we will get into it in a second. So this piece, which I will demonstrate, it's called Unearthly Vibrations, and the reason that it's called Unearthly Vibrations is because I came up with this piece as an installation piece, actually. This piece explores the collaboration between human and non-human bodies through vibration and sound. And as you can see that there's an aquarium, and in this piece there are multiple vibrators freely move in an aquarium, and I capture their sounds using electromagnetic EMF sensors, which we will get into it. And these sensors enable the listening of various frequencies and harmonics that the unique internal electronics and oscillation rates of the vibrations produce. So I basically use vibrators as oscillators with different rates and different patterns. And because of they have magnets, they actually tend to sometimes attract each other, or they tend to follow each other. So they actually start to create their own dynamism in the aquarium itself. I created this piece, installation piece, as part of actually Queer Paranormal exhibition at the Houston Gallery at Bennington College, where I used to teach. And this is an exhibition concerning Shirley Jackson and the haunting of Hill House. So the idea came to me when I was thinking about queer paranormal. I thought about this very specific hallway because this is a hallway, this is a building called Jennings, and that building was actually a big inspiration for that novel, and I really wanted to actually basically put the aquarium at the end of the hall as a visible. spot, but until you reach out to the aquarium, you wouldn't have actually any visible cues of what kind of sounds that you were hearing. And it was a very simple setup. I basically suspended a lot of EMF sensors into the aquarium, and I just bumped the sound into 8-channel custom speakers array on the hallway. There was nothing complicated. Each day, those sounds were picked up, recorded for a limited amount of time, and then played back in that hallway. But the main idea was that each day the composition would be slightly different based on the movements of the vibrators and how they were positioned in the aquarium. Later, I began to perform with this piece actually as a kind of a fun experiment with Tessia Machado, who's a sound artist. I invited her to Bennington. If you are familiar with her work, she's amazing. And we wanted to have a duo set, and I brought the aquarium into the duo set, and I started to experiment with it on the spot. And I realized that there was a very interesting potential in this collaboration. So this is actually from that performance, the first time that I ever started to. Pandemic 2020, and I was doing stream live performances from home, and I came up with a more elaborate setup. This is like so this is basically the piece. What I will do now is to give you a little bit of a demonstration of the piece live, and then we will actually talk about the setup, break down the setup, and then you will also have a lot of opportunities to ask me a question. again, I come from a sound engineering background, so for me, mixers and knobs and faders are the way that I love shaping sound. And it's actually, normally I actually don't use computer in my performances. The only time that I use digital domain is to specialize sound and do multi-channel sound setup, and also present in a presentation like this. Otherwise, I actually don't like to be on a screen. I want to engage with my materials in a more kind of tactile way. And it's a totally personal preference. I know that a lot of people do computer music that are very tactile, but for me, because I come from a sound engineering background, this works better. So everything comes into the mixer and goes out from the mixer. Normally I actually have a smaller mixer, but my smaller mixer is currently in New York. So this is a larger mixer of the mixer that I normally use. Again, I have sources, for example, these vibrators that are picked up by these passive pickup EMF sensors. So they are very simple electromagnetic sensors. They are passive sensors. They don't need actually any extra power. If you are interested in them, Loam Audio, Polish company that I really love, they produce these ones, not that expensive at all. They come as a stereo actually sensor. So my sensors goes to my mixer, and then I have another source. As you can see, this is my feedback maker, let's say. This is designed by John Nansen in Stockholm. He's an instrument maker, and he actually designed these Rundgang feedback makers, but he also tuned it for me as a custom, made a custom tune for me. And I can use this with plates to create a feedback. It's a very simple mechanism. There's a piezo pickup, there's a speaker, and then if you actually send the sound to the speaker that comes from the actual surface that attached to the piezo speaker, it creates a immediate feedback. And the way that you can shape the feedback is basically moving the surface, resonant surface. It has to be a resonant surface on top of it. So I can actually come up with my own feedback sounds, which I rely on them to work with them, because I think about feedback as also a very interesting moment in sound. We activate a sound, we hear back, and we have a moment to be able to shape it. Feedback needs time to build, and I like to play with shaping sound through time, with incorporating different movements, just by slightly changing for example, the material on top of the feedback plate. So they go to my mixer. I have a whole analog processing modules in here. One thing that I use is I mostly rely on Morphogene in this particular make noise setup. Morphogene is a simple sampler. You can record and record. It's very easy to record material during a live session, and then actually change the speed of that sound is very easy. It works like a tape machine, basically. I rely on Morphogene a lot in the setup, and then of course I have a mimephone which gives a little bit reverberation. I have opportunity to play with the rate of the diffusion that I incorporate in that sound. So this actually allows me to record, for example, vibrator sounds change the timing of that vibration sound, and then it changes, of course, the qualities of the sound. For example, slowing down makes the fundamental pitch lower than the original sound. And then I have time from Bastel Instruments. If you are familiar with Bastel Instruments, they also have semi-modular systems. I use actually both of their time and SoftPop. I actually love the company. I find them also not crazy expensive based on the quality of the products that they make, they produce. So time is for me a great way to actually shape the sound by just adjusting the delay time. Simple trick, if you actually play with the delay time of a sound, you can actually change the harmonics of that sound. So it's a very simple trick again, and it also allows me to build up the feedback sound, expand the feedback sound that I produce. And then I use SoftPop, which allows me to, I use the most of the filters of the actually SoftPop module. All of these modules I'm using it with the live input. So nothing actually, really nothing, especially what you heard now, comes from any external oscillators or anything like that. It's all live sound. So I can play with the rate and also I can cut off certain frequencies and play with the rate of the input, which actually creates these rhythmic patterns that you are hearing. And also I can change the envelope of the sound input very easily to create different rhythmic patterns. So I can change the attack and decay of the sound, input sound, and reintroduce it with a certain rate. So that's what actually makes the rhythmic pattern happens live. And all these things get summed in my mixer. Again, most of everything happens all the time, but the way that I perform with sound is to bring it those possibilities, take out some of the possibilities. So I actually compose the performance by playing with faders, like live mixing. I rely on my EQs a lot on the mixer. I love shaping sounds live using the EQs on the mixer. And then for example, this quad setup, I use laptop. So how it happens is I basically send the sound from the mixer. If I was actually performing the stereo, this would go directly to the speakers, and this will be actually full analog setup, except the little processor that the Morphagene has to record sound, which records it on an SD card, nothing fancy. Everything would be analog, but since I'm incorporating spatial audio, a little bit more specialization in a simple quad setup, I use computers. And Motu, which is hidden underneath there, is my analog to digital converter to convert the sound to a digital domain. I will try to share, and I use Ableton for this specialization, but you will see that I have only two actually tools two tools in the Ableton digital tools that affects the specialization. Can I send this to there? Let me just check. Displays. Okay, you can see, right? Great. Cool. So this is my Ableton setup. As you can see, it's very simple. SSL come in, SSL input. I take the input and I distribute it basically quad setup. How I like to use multi-channel setups in Ableton is to create actually return channels that directly goes to 1, 2 speakers, 3, 4 back speakers. Those are my return channels. So what I can do is I can actually use my sands to send the sounds directly to those outputs. It's for me a very simple idea of how to work with spatial audio in Ableton. Instead of try to sound every single track on every single dedicated loudspeaker, I actually use the return channels as kind of a summed output. You will see that there is also these multi-channel plugins. One of them is GRM Space Grain, and the other one is GRM Space Filter. I rely on Space Filter a lot because it actually allows me to send the different frequency bands of the sound to different speakers. So instead of actually saying I'm gonna send, for example, left channel to my stereo left channel to my stereo, let's say quad left and right, or that particular sound to that particular speaker. This actually allows me to deconstruct the sound, deconstruct the frequency bands. If you are familiar with the sound frequencies, we can hear between 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, ideally, if you have a perfect hearing, which never happens, because we start to lose actually hearing when we start to get older, right? And it's a human hearing range. Other creatures can hear sometimes way more extended than us. But, for example, I can sound the low frequencies between, arbitrary 0 hertz, which, you wouldn't be able to hear 1 hertz in this space with these speakers. But let's say from 80 hertz to realistically 220 hertz, this is the one frequency band, and I'm slowly rotating that frequency band. From 200 hertz to 1K, I'm actually rotating that frequency band a bit in a faster rate, in the opposite direction. I'm actually using the third frequency band from 5K to 10K. It's actually, you can see that it's more in the central zone, and fourth is the higher zone. And one of the best qualities of these GRM tools are you can actually you can adjust your output very easily. So for example, if I wanna, which I performed in a cube array, I can do cube, I can do octophonic sound, and you can also create your own. For example, I performed in a cleat system. I use my own cleat. This is a really, really useful tool. It's $100. It's not that accessible, but I find it, if you are working with a spatial audio, this is a great tool to use. And it works with my own also ideas of how I want to use spatial audio, not in a very much of a trick, but actually really think about how I will sculpt the sound. Of course, I change a lot of things in the space. In this case, because it was a demonstration, I didn't spend too much time, but if it was a real performance place, I would actually spend hours and hours to tune what I want to do with these tools. For me, it makes a huge difference when you actually really spend time and not really think about it in your head, because it never it's not realistic. And the other tool, which I don't rely on it that much, because for me this idea makes sense to me. This idea is a bit more fancier. It's a granulation. If you know sound granulation, you can actually decompose the sound into multiple grains. It comes from Zenekis's practice. And you can actually, for example, arrange the number of grains. You can also arrange the density of the grains. You can arrange the duration of how many seconds that each grain will take. And for example, if we were demonstrating this, let's say I was, this is going to be feedback sound that is stayed in my system right now. I will just, so right now I'm relying on space grain, and I will change the duration. You can hear the effect. So this is multiple grains. This is apologies, by the way. I was wondering why this is not actually working. I was actually working with right now space filter, not the grain. So this is actually the grain right now is coming in. Okay, now you will actually hear it. I was like, this is not working. What's happening? Okay,
Still sounds cool.
This is the number of grains. This is the duration. This is the density. And if I want to move the sound between right, left, I can do that also easily with this setup. But again, for me, this is a bit more of it doesn't work with my how I like to work with sound. So instead of that, this makes sense to me, more sense to me, but I have options at least. I can actually go back between options.
Are those Ableton specific, or will they work with other programs?
So they can work with other programs. Yeah, I actually mixed with them and you can actually, if you work with, for example, 3D sound, ambisonic systems, you can work with this plugin too. I mix with them also, in a more like a time-based sound pieces or music pieces. Yeah, they are very useful tools. So, any questions? If we go back to my this slide, yeah.
Do you ever live modify the plugins, or do you try to just stay like out of the digital world and like stick with your analog world for that?
That's a great question. I think when I feel like I can create a better dynamic with the specialization, that's the reason that, for example, the space filter, I can actually determine the rotation, the rate of the rotation, and if I have 2 or 3 slides, because I don't want to give myself a lot of control. So the only control slides you will see from the right now, for example, I can make the third band. I can make the rotation in an opposite way. So it's angle, and I can also change the radius of the, for example, how the sound, the certain frequency spectrum moves. So I don't like to give myself a lot of options. I have this kind of a MIDI controller with faders again. I don't like triggering things with MIDI controllers because it's I don't know, it for me it actually breaks down my attention. I guess the most important thing for me when I'm performing live is to really be attentive to the material, to for example, the creatures that I'm working with, to the sounds in real time, and not really going with this kind of predetermined agenda. And I think for me, this environment feels more intuitive for me, to be able to listen, not really get distracted by also for me, computers are, even though right now they are amazing in terms of the reactive time, the latency is the reaction time of the laptops are, when we started to computer music, there was a huge latency between your input, how you control, and then your reaction time. Now it's not actually a problem, but still I don't have a full trust in them for some reason. I think it comes because from this idea that they were slow at some point and now they caught up finally, and I'm still, being cautious about that. But mainly for me, actually, the screen has to be separate from this practice. That's the reason that I like to work with more analog systems generally in my performance practice. Other practices, in my audiovisual work, yes, of course, I produce with computers. I mix. I'm also mixing engineer, and when I do installations, I compose things using computers, programs, and etc. Of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm curious how you feel about the movement of the vibrators and I don't know what your relationship is with the randomness of it, and then also, I saw you were using the plankton thing as a graphic score, and just kind of how you interact with visual stimulus and how that plays into what you're doing.
It's a huge part of how I think about structure in my sound practice. I rely on actually these kind of relationalities. They guide me. I get influenced by them. For example, with planktons, Jess and I spent 3 or 4 days together. I also, I have to say, I love spending time with these collaborative environments. And when Jess and I were practicing for 3 days, I started to actually recognize the planktons, how they are very extremely playful. Actually, they sometimes push materials underneath of in the water. They actually jump around. They are very curious, and those things actually really informs what how I want to play with them. So I think they are basically they become my curiosities. So in this case too, I love that they sometimes start to get attached to one another, right? You saw it because they have magnetic qualities. They start to follow one another. Those things really inform how I think about, how I want to introduce a sound, or when I'm listening, their patterns. Those things actually influences me when I'm making improvised decisions. Yeah. Yes.
Super nerdy question, but
Of
how
course.
did you decide upon what you were going to use for your digital analog and analog to digital conversion? Was it just the fact that it had multi-channel capabilities?
Yes.
Oh.
If you are looking for a very pristine sound, as a sound engineer, I would highly recommend RMEs. They have amazing converters. But for me, Moto is compact. It gives me 8 channel. I can travel with it. So yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I saw you use the fish tank for multiple performances. Is there is a specific I don't know, like draw to it.
It's funny because I don't like to repeat ideas actually, and it was a thing. So Jess and I were thinking about our collaboration, and Jess actually saw this piece, and we were talking about how actually when we were thinking about plankton and sounds, and how actually these creatures feels like, you know, those planktons, and then. It was very funny because we were going to perform at MIT Museum, and then it was going to be actually a public performance that was supposed to be kid friendly, and then I was actually Case's house, and there were cat toys around, and I was like, oh, cat toys, oh, magnets, oh, they. And I started to actually play around with the cat toys, and I was like, this is perfect. So it's a repeated idea, which I don't like to use repeated ideas in different projects. So yes, I mean, it's unfortunately a repeated idea, but I think it works for both cases, so I'm going to embrace it and move forward with it, but I'm not going to do another performance or a piece that involves aquarium. It's done.
At least we got to see it.
Yeah.
Well, if there aren't other questions, we can wrap it up, but I guess if you want to talk individually,
Yes, please.
Feel free. Yeah.
Definitely, and shoot me emails and etc. Instagram message if you have other questions. Also, come and talk to me. Otherwise, thanks so much, Kate, for inviting me to be part of this amazing series.